Have you ever watched someone try to sell something that didn't belong to them while you were standing in the same room? Because I have. But before we continue, please subscribe and turn on the notification bell for updates. My uncle found a buyer, scheduled the tour, shook hands like he owned the place, smiled like he'd already spent the money, and I let him finish talking. Then I unfolded one piece of paper. But to understand why that paper mattered, you have to understand the house. My name is Maya Thompson. I'm 32 years old, and I work as a paralegal in Columbus, Ohio. I read contracts for a living. I notice details people hope no one sees. Dates, signatures, expired commissions, the small print buried under confidence. The house sits on Linden Street. 4 bedrooms, white colonial, blue shutters that my grandmother repainted every 5 years like clockwork. She bought it in 1978 for $62,000 with my grandfather. It's worth just over $410,000 now. Mortgage paid off in 2004. No liens. No debts. Clean history. But it's more than numbers. That staircase? I learned to walk holding that banister. That kitchen? I did homework at the round oak table while Grandma Eleanor Thompson, 87 years old, sharp as glass most days, baked peach cobbler from scratch. After my parents divorced when I was 9, that house became my anchor. Christmas mornings, 4th of July barbecues, the smell of lemon polish and old books. Stability. So when my Uncle Rick, 54 years old and permanently allergic to responsibility, called me 3 weeks ago and said, "We're selling Mom's house," I thought he was joking. He wasn't. She agreed, he told me. Too fast. Too smooth. It's time. Maintenance is too much. I've got power of attorney. Power of attorney. He said it like it was a magic spell. Now here's the thing about Rick. He's charming. Always has been. The kind of man who can talk his way into discounts, out of speeding tickets, into business ventures that somehow never quite work out. He's been between opportunities for most of the last decade. And suddenly, with Grandma in the hospital recovering from a minor stroke, he was listing the house online for $399,000. Quick sale price. Below market value. Does that sound like someone carefully planning for an elderly parent's future? Or does it sound like someone who needs cash fast? I didn't confront him immediately. I went to see Grandma first. She was sitting up in her hospital bed, hair brushed neatly, reading glasses perched on her nose. When I mentioned the house, her forehead creased. "Selling," she said. "Why would I sell? That house is paid for." I felt something cold slide down my spine. "You told Uncle Rick you wanted to sell?" She shook her head slowly. "He brought some papers last week. Said they were hospital forms." Hospital forms? Let me ask you something. If someone you trusted put papers in front of you while you were medicated, recovering from a stroke, would you read every line carefully? Or would you assume they were helping? That night, I did what I'm trained to do. I checked county records. Franklin County Auditor's website is public. Anyone can search property transfers. And 11 days earlier, a new document had been recorded. A quitclaim deed. Grantor, Eleanor Thompson. Grantee, Richard Thompson. My uncle. I stared at the screen for a long time. Because legally, that meant ownership had been transferred. Quietly. Efficiently. Without a single family discussion. But something felt off. The filing date. The notary line. The timestamp. Details most people would scroll past. I requested a digital copy and printed it out. Then I compared it to an older document, Grandma's original deed from 1978, which I still had in a fireproof box she once asked me to organize. Side by side. And that's when I noticed it. One small inconsistency. Tiny. Almost invisible. But devastating. Meanwhile, Rick had already found a buyer. Daniel Ruiz, 41, a real estate investor known for buying clean properties and flipping them. Cash ready. Serious. He scheduled a private showing for Saturday at 2 p.m. Rick texted me the details like it was a courtesy. Figured you'd want to be there. Oh, I wanted to be there. I didn't argue. I didn't accuse him. I didn't tip my hand. I printed the document. Folded it once. Then again. Slipped it into my bag. Saturday came. The house looked staged. Too staged. Family photos missing from the hallway. Grandma's quilts folded away. It felt like walking into a version of my childhood that had already been erased. Rick stood in the living room, laughing with Daniel, talking about motivated seller energy. He was confident. Too confident. And here's the thing about confidence, it's loudest right before it collapses. Daniel asked about the title. Rick said, "Crystal clean." That's when I realized something. Rick truly believed no one would check. He believed Grandma was too old to fight. He believed I wouldn't interfere. He forgot one thing. I work in legal documentation every single day. So I let him finish talking. I let him smile. I let him promise a smooth closing. And then I reached into my bag and unfolded the deed. But what happened when the buyer read one single line out loud? Would stop the entire room cold. Have you ever watched someone lie with complete confidence? Not a nervous lie. Not a shaky one. The kind where they believe it. That was my Uncle Rick, standing in my grandmother's living room, gesturing toward the bay window like he'd built the house himself. Original hardwood floors, he told Daniel Ruiz, his voice smooth, controlled. We've kept everything in great shape. I stood near the doorway between the dining room and kitchen, arms folded loosely, silent. The house felt different. Emptier. The air didn't carry Grandma's usual vanilla cinnamon scent. It smelled like lemon cleaner and strategy. Daniel, 41, dressed in a navy quarter-zip and polished boots, wasn't an amateur. You could tell by the way he scanned corners. He checked ceiling lines. Looked at baseboards. Investors don't just see charm. They see margins. So title's clean? Daniel asked casually as they stepped into the kitchen. Rick didn't hesitate. Crystal. Crystal. That word hung in the air. I tilted my head slightly. Crystal was bold. Crystal meant no doubts. No questions. No shadows. Property taxes? Daniel continued. About $5,800 annually, Rick replied instantly. Correct number. He'd done some homework. Any outstanding liens? Nope. Daniel nodded slowly. He was calculating. Purchase at $399,000. Renovate kitchen and bathrooms. Resell around $475,000. Maybe $490,000 if the market held steady. Rick was already counting his cut in his head. I could see it. The way his shoulders relaxed. The way he avoided looking at me. He thought silence meant surrender. Let me ask you something. If you were about to lose your childhood home, would you argue in the driveway? Or would you wait for the perfect moment? I waited. They moved back into the living room. Daniel asked one more question, the one that mattered. Is there anything legally I should know about? Probate issues? Sibling disputes? There it was. Rick chuckled lightly. No disputes. I've got power of attorney. My mother wanted this handled quickly. He said it smoothly. Rehearsed. I pushed off the doorway. Actually, I said calmly, before you move forward, Daniel, you might want to read this. Rick froze. Just slightly. A flicker in his jaw. I reached into my bag and unfolded the printed document. The quitclaim deed from the county records office. 11 days old. I handed it to Daniel. Rick tried to intercept it with a laugh. Maya, what are you doing? Just making sure everything's transparent. Daniel took the paper. Silence thickened. He scanned the header first. Franklin County Recorder's Office. Official stamp. Recording number. All legitimate. Grantor, Eleanor Thompson. Grantee, Richard Thompson. Rick crossed his arms. Defensive now. It's already recorded. I know, I replied. Daniel's eyes moved lower. Signature line. Notary block. And then they stopped. He leaned closer. Read it again. Then out loud. Notary commission expiration. June 12, 2023. He looked at the signing date. Signed October 4, 2023. The room changed temperature. Rick blinked. So? Daniel looked up slowly. That means the notary's commission was expired at the time of signing. Rick waved a hand dismissively. That's just a clerical oversight. Happens all the time. Does it? Because here's a surprising fact most people don't know. In Ohio, a notary whose commission has expired has zero legal authority to notarize documents. That notarization becomes legally defective. And when it comes to property transfers, defective notarization isn't a typo. It's a problem. A big one. Daniel straightened slightly. An invalid notarization can make the deed challengeable. Rick's voice tightened. Challengeable doesn't mean invalid. No, I said evenly. But it means risky. Especially if the grantor didn't fully understand what she was signing. Rick's eyes snapped to me. Are you accusing me of something? I held his gaze. I'm pointing out a fact. Daniel looked between us. Investor instincts kicking in. Risk assessment mode. How old is your mother? He asked. 87, I answered before Rick could. And she was hospitalized recently? Daniel added, clearly connecting dots. Rick stepped forward. This is ridiculous. She signed it willingly. Maya's being emotional. Emotional. There it was. The classic move. Discredit the woman in the room. I felt heat rise in my chest, but kept my voice level. Daniel, if you close on a property with a potentially defective deed, and it's later challenged, that's a clouded title. Title insurance might not cover intentional fraud. Rick's face lost color. Fraud, he snapped. I didn't blink. If the notary commission was expired, and if the signature is contested, yes. It could escalate. Daniel slowly folded the paper once. You said title was crystal, he told Rick quietly. Rick's confidence cracked. It is. This is being blown out of proportion. Daniel handed the paper back to me instead of Rick. I'm going to need to speak to my attorney before proceeding. And, just like that, the air left the room. Rick turned to me once Daniel stepped toward the hallway. His voice dropped low. You think you're clever? I met his stare. No, I said softly. I think I read. But here's the part Rick didn't expect. The expired notary wasn't even the worst problem. Because while he was scrambling to defend the paperwork, I had already noticed something far more dangerous. Something that couldn't be explained away as clerical error. And when I revealed it, there would be no more pretending. But what I discovered next would make the notary issue look small, and it would force everyone in that house to choose a side. You can fake a signature. But you can't fake muscle memory. After Daniel stepped into the hallway to make a quick call, the living room felt smaller. Tighter. Like the walls were leaning in to listen. Rick turned on me the second we were alone. What exactly are you trying to do? He hissed. His charming host mask was gone. In its place? Panic wrapped in anger. I'm making sure Grandma isn't taken advantage of, I said calmly. Taken advantage of? He let out a sharp laugh. You think I'd scam my own mother? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked to the dining room table, the same oak table where Grandma used to help me with spelling tests, and laid out two documents side by side. The new quitclaim deed, and a copy of Grandma's original 1978 deed. Rick's eyes flicked downward. Then back up to me. What is this supposed to prove? Humor me, I said quietly. Have you ever looked at someone's handwriting across decades? It changes slightly with age, slower, maybe shakier. But certain patterns stay the same. The way they loop their L. The angle of their T. The pressure on the downstroke. That's muscle memory. Grandma Eleanor has signed birthday cards for me every single year. Even after her arthritis started. Even after the mild tremor in her right hand began 2 years ago. Her signature always had 3 consistent traits. A wide, looping capital E. A dramatic upward flick at the end of Thompson. And a slight tremor ripple through longer strokes. The 1978 signature on the original deed? Flowing. Confident. Big looping E. The signature on Rick's quitclaim deed? Smaller. Compressed. The E wasn't looped. It was printed. And the lines were steady. Too steady. Rick crossed his arms. People's handwriting changes when they're 87. Yes, I agreed. It usually gets shakier. Silence. I pointed at the newer signature. There's no tremor here. He leaned forward, squinting like that might change what he was seeing. You're reaching. Am I? Let me ask you something. If someone with a documented hand tremor suddenly signs their name perfectly steady on a legal transfer of their only major asset, would that not raise a question? Rick's jaw tightened. She was having a good day. A good day doesn't erase neuromuscular patterns. He rolled his eyes. You sound ridiculous. Maybe. But Daniel walked back into the room right then, and he saw the documents spread out. What's this? He asked. I gestured toward the table. Signature comparison. Daniel stepped closer. Rick shifted uncomfortably. This is turning into a circus. Daniel didn't respond. He studied both signatures carefully. Investors don't just calculate profit. They calculate risk. This one's different, Daniel said finally, pointing at the new deed. Rick's voice rose half a notch. Of course it's different. It's 45 years later. Daniel didn't look convinced. The structure is different. The E is different. Exactly. I reached into my bag again. Rick's eyes widened slightly. Yes, there was more. I pulled out 3 birthday cards Grandma had given me over the last 5 years. I'd kept them not because I anticipated needing forensic evidence one day, but because I'm sentimental. I laid them out. Each signature matched the 1978 version in style. Loop. Flick. Tremor. Daniel compared them silently. The new deed signature stood out like a stranger trying to mimic an accent. Rick let out a frustrated breath. So what, you're accusing me of forging her name now? His voice cracked on the word forging. I held his gaze. I'm saying this doesn't match. And you're what, a handwriting expert? No, I said. But if this goes to court, one will be hired. That landed. For the first time, real fear flickered behind his eyes. Here's something most people don't realize. Contested signatures on property deeds trigger forensic document examination, ink analysis, stroke pressure mapping, even microscopic comparison of hesitation marks. If someone traces a signature, experts can see the stops and starts. Rick ran a hand through his thinning hair. You're blowing this out of proportion. Am I? I lowered my voice. Grandma told me she thought she was signing hospital paperwork. That hit harder than the handwriting. Rick's face changed, not anger this time. Calculation. She knew what she was signing, he said quickly. Did she? I asked. Because if she didn't, that's not just a bad notarization. That's misrepresentation. Daniel stepped back slightly, increasing physical distance from Rick. Subtle, but telling. Look, Rick said, turning to Daniel, family drama aside, the deed is recorded. It's done. Daniel shook his head slowly. Recorded doesn't mean bulletproof. Rick snapped. You're really going to let her sabotage this? Daniel answered evenly, I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm protecting my investment. The power dynamic had shifted. Rick wasn't in control anymore. And that's when he made a mistake. You don't even have the full story, he muttered under his breath. I looked at him sharply. What does that mean? He hesitated. Too long. There are things you don't know, he said. About what? Grandma's finances? Debts? Medical bills? Or something worse? The room felt charged now, not just with legal tension, but with secrets. Rick grabbed his coat suddenly. This conversation is over. Daniel didn't stop him. I did. One more question, I said quietly. He paused near the door. Where did you get the notary? He didn't answer immediately. And in that hesitation, I saw it. A crack in the entire story. Because if the notary was questionable, and the signature didn't match, then this wasn't a rushed decision. It was planned. Rick finally said, a friend. A friend. Of course. But what I discovered about that friend later would make the signature issue look minor. Because this wasn't just about a fake signature. It was about motive. And once I uncovered why Rick needed that house sold so quickly, everything would make terrifying sense. If you're going to lie, don't lie to someone who reads contracts for a living. That Saturday afternoon, the air in my grandmother's house had changed. The warm sunlight through the bay window now felt harsh. The living room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and fear. Rick was sweating, his usual smooth charm cracked. Daniel Ruiz was pacing slightly, clearly calculating the legal risk and possible fallout. And I was calm. Focused. because I knew one more document would end the charade. Rick had one last card. He pulled a folder from his briefcase with a flourish. "This," he said, holding it up like a weapon, "is my proof. Durable power of attorney. Signed months ago. Covers everything." Grandma agreed. I took it from him carefully, my fingers tracing the embossed seal. The folder felt heavier than its weight. My heart raced, not out of fear, but anticipation. If this power of attorney, POA, truly gave him authority over real estate, it could explain the quitclaim deed. But something about Rick's confidence set off alarms. Too rehearsed. Too smooth. I opened it slowly. The legal jargon practically jumped off the page. "The undersigned, Eleanor Thompson, hereby grants Richard Thompson, my attorney in fact, the power to make healthcare-related decisions on my behalf." Wait. Healthcare-related? Not property? I blinked, reading it again. I looked at Rick. "Excuse me. I read it correctly." His face tightened. "Yes, it includes other matters." I continued reading aloud, highlighting the critical part. "This durable power of attorney authorizes my attorney in fact to make healthcare and medical decisions only. This document does not grant authority to transfer real property, manage financial accounts, or execute real estate transactions." Daniel froze mid-step. Even Rick's face drained of color. I let the words sink in. "So, you sold Grandma's house with a POA that doesn't cover property transfers?" I asked softly. "And you thought no one would notice?" Rick opened his mouth, closed it, then muttered something incoherent. "Here's a fact most people don't realize about POAs. In Ohio, a durable power of attorney is only as strong as its language. If the language limits authority, any actions outside that scope are invalid. That means Rick had no legal right to execute the deed at all. Zero. Nada." I felt my pulse steady, even as anger bubbled beneath the surface. This wasn't just shady. This wasn't an expired notary or a bad signature. This was outright overreach and potentially criminal. Daniel crossed his arms, staring at Rick. "So you claim authority to sell a house you had no legal power over?" Rick's throat moved, but no words came. He tried to laugh it off. "She verbally approved it." I cut him off. "Verbal approval does not transfer property. Period." Daniel shook his head. "Ma'am, if you're correct, this could be considered attempted fraud." Rick's hands clenched at his sides. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," I said, voice calm, cold. "And now so does everyone else." We heard a knock at the door. A neighbor, concerned by the heated conversation, had called the police. Within minutes, an officer arrived. "Evening," said the officer, notebook in hand. "Heard a disturbance." "What's happening here?" Daniel quickly explained the situation. The room went quiet. Rick's confidence evaporated entirely. The officer looked at me. "Ma'am, do you want to press charges?" I glanced at Rick. Memories of childhood flashed. Grandma's living room during Christmas mornings, her laughter echoing as I unwrapped presents. The smell of her lemon polish and cookies. The safety that home had always represented. "Yes," I said. "I want the house protected. And I want the truth documented." Rick's face went pale. His usual bravado had completely crumbled. He muttered something about misunderstandings, but no one was listening. I felt a mix of satisfaction and relief. Satisfying, because finally, the layers of deception were unraveling. Relief, because Grandma's home, the house that had anchored my entire childhood, would not be taken from us. But there was more. I had suspected Rick's motivation, but I didn't know the full extent. Later, after the police left and Daniel contacted his attorney, I uncovered the reason Rick needed this house sold so urgently. He had gambling debts, massive ones. Nearly $96,000 in credit card balances and loans he hadn't mentioned. The house was meant to be a quick cash solution. Every step of his plan pointed to desperation. The expired notary, the forged-looking signature, the invalid POA, all of it indicated someone trying to engineer a sale under pressure. Grandma, who had been quietly observing from her wheelchair, finally spoke. I knew something felt wrong. I just couldn't put it into words. Her words sank in deeper than any legal explanation could. She updated her will, establishing a family trust, appointing me as trustee, and explicitly preventing any unilateral property sale. That document, properly executed, ensured her wishes would be respected no matter what Rick tried next. I walked through the house later, touching the staircase banister, feeling the grooves worn smooth from decades of footsteps. Everything was still here. Still ours. And while the ordeal had tested my patience, my trust, and my nerve, it also reinforced something crucial. Knowledge is power and preparation is protection. And for Rick? Well, the legal system was beginning to catch up. An investigation into the invalid notarization and possible fraud was underway. If he tried anything further, consequences were inevitable. The house remained safe, but the lessons lingered. Family can betray. Charms can mislead. Confidence can collapse under scrutiny. And sometimes, the smallest piece of paper, the one you fold carefully in your bag, can stop the largest lie in its tracks. Have you ever watched a family secret unravel in real time? Have you ever realized that something you thought was solid, untouchable, could almost vanish with a signature, a stamp, a piece of paper? That's what happened to me that Saturday. And it changed everything. After the confrontation, after Daniel had called his attorney, after the police had left with their notes, the house felt quiet in a new way. Not the comforting quiet of childhood afternoons, but the tense quiet of truths finally revealed. Rick was gone, slamming the car door behind him, probably trying to recalculate a way out of this mess. His charm couldn't save him anymore. His confidence couldn't rewrite the law. I walked through the house slowly, fingertips brushing the worn banister on the staircase. I passed the living room where Christmas trees had sparkled for decades, the kitchen where Grandma had rolled dough for countless pies. Each room carried memories, laughter, and arguments long past. And yet, for the first time, I felt the fragility of it all. How close we'd come to losing more than walls and windows. We could have lost our history. Grandma, sitting in her favorite armchair, watched me. She was quiet, but her eyes spoke volumes. "You did what you had to do," she said softly. "I just knew something was wrong." Her words made me pause. It wasn't just about legalities. It was about trust, family, protection. She had been deceived, almost stripped of her home, by someone she loved. That's a sting that goes deeper than contracts, notary stamps, or even fraud investigations. I sat with her for a long moment, told her everything I had discovered, the expired notary commission, the mismatched signature, the limits of the power of attorney, Rick's debts, his desperation. Each revelation was met with a quiet shake of her head, sometimes a murmured "I should have known." But I could see the relief in her eyes too. Relief that the house, the heart of our family, would remain in our hands. Afterwards, we went through her will and updated the trust. I was named trustee, tasked with ensuring no one could sell the house without proper authorization. That meant the property would remain protected for as long as I lived and beyond, a safeguard against anyone else trying to manipulate, deceive, or coerce. And yet, while the legal battle was resolved for now, the emotional battle lingered. How could someone we trusted so completely think it was acceptable to try to sell Grandma's home without permission? How could someone betray family for money, for personal gain, for debt relief? I had watched my uncle, the man who once taught me how to ride a bike, crumble under the weight of his own deception. It was a lesson in human behavior I hadn't expected to learn so sharply. I realized something vital that day. The smallest details can carry the heaviest weight. A signature, a stamp, a line in a contract, a handwritten card from years ago. Those details, overlooked by most, were the difference between betrayal succeeding and truth prevailing. Daniel Ruiz, the buyer, eventually left. He was respectful, professional, and cautious. He told me later he had never seen a sale unravel so quickly because of legal minutiae. "Most people just assume what's handed to them is valid," he said. "You didn't. And that's what made all the difference. Not anger. Not confrontation. Not even legal authority. Just awareness, preparation, and courage." I had read the small print. I had noticed what others missed. And because of that, our house, was safe. I walked through the house one last time that evening. The setting sun cast long shadows across the floorboards. I paused in the hallway, thinking about the years of memories etched into these walls. About Grandma's laughter, her stubbornness, her insistence that this house remain ours. About Rick's betrayal and how close it had come to succeeding. And then I realized something deeper. Sometimes the real inheritance isn't the house itself. It's the knowledge of what's worth protecting, the courage to act when deception arises, and the willingness to face uncomfortable truths for the sake of those you love. Grandma looked at me and smiled faintly. "We'll keep it," she said. "Thanks to you." I nodded, but I also knew something else. This wasn't just about our family or this house. It was about a universal lesson. Vigilance matters. Details matter. Trust is precious, but so is verification. And sometimes, the things people think they can get away with aren't nearly as hidden as they believe. I left the house that evening feeling both exhausted and relieved. The legal battle had not fully ended. There were investigations, inquiries, and probably some uncomfortable phone calls in Rick's future, but the immediate danger was gone. And more importantly, the home, the memories, the legacy of my grandmother's life remained intact. Have you ever had to stand up for what's yours? For what belongs to someone you love? For the truth when everyone else assumes deception will go unnoticed? I have. And it's exhausting. But it's worth it. Because sometimes the most powerful weapon isn't anger, isn't confrontation. It's knowledge. And the smallest piece of paper, the one you read carefully, the one you notice, the one you fold and carry with you, can stop a lie dead in its tracks. So here's the takeaway. Always pay attention. Read the details. Notice what's off. Ask questions. Because someone's confidence, someone's charm, even someone's love for money can never outmatch the quiet power of being informed. And as I turned the key in the front door that night, hearing the familiar click echo through the hallway, I whispered to myself, to Grandma, and maybe even to the house itself, "We're still here. Still ours. Still safe."